Good morning, good evening, good night. No matter where you are on this planet, I'm sending you love and light. Check me out. A lot of people think pride and ego are the same thing. They're not. It's subjective, I guess, based off of your perception. Um, but the truth is, ego is the I. So ego in Greek, back the origin means I. I exist. I am. God is the I am. God is the ego. God is the identifier, right? Just like you identify with I. So the ego can become compromised. Your temple. What is the temple? Between your dome, the king dome, or are you king dumb? You understand? I'm going to start breaking down all of this because it's really word magic that blinds people from the truth, the light. I want y'all to be king dumb. So what you need to understand is the ego is your I. Your I doesn't need to become compromised. If your I becomes compromised, your why becomes compromised, the temple of God becomes compromised. Now you're living with demonic thought. This is how you become affected, right? This is the trickle down effect. Ego is I am. I exist. You exist. You are the ego. Your ego can be divine or it can be of an evil nature. This is just the reality of the situation. If you are living and breathing, this is the reality. The ego and pride are not the same thing. See, you can become so all about I that you start doing these comparisons and you're putting other people down. You could say that that's because of the ego. Or you can say it's because of things like pride, like being a narcissist, like being a sociopath, like being a psychopath, right? You can blame it on these other things that describe this character that's going on within the I, within the ego. I don't necessarily believe it's the ego take you to places where you think you're better, a superior athlete, stronger, faster, smarter, more beautiful, whatever, healthier. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I don't believe that the ego can take you to that place by itself. I believe it's a culmination of other things which affects the I, the mind, the perception, because the I is the ego. So it's when life and other energies and other perception, other schools of thought come into play. That's when you become tainted in your spirit, in your mind. This is where you go from kingdom to kingdom to kingdom. Like, seriously. So just be aware of that. There's nothing wrong with your ego, long as you're operating within humility. Proverbs 11:2 tell you that, God detests pride. God is disgusted with it. God hates that, right? It tells you that, if you live in pride, you will surely meet a haughty fall. It's basically breaking down, but if you live with humility, you will surely find wisdom. If you live with pride, you will find the fall. If you live with wisdom, you will find humility. Now, if you live with humility, you will find wisdom. So, it is actually wise to not isolate yourself, because that's essentially what you're doing. When you isolate yourself, you remove yourself from the tribe of God. You remove yourself from this whole school of information, the school of thought. It's just you. And, if you're going off of the numbers, one versus the many, one is always going to lose. So if you're really just being a life tactician, military minded, whatever it is, if you have that type of mentality, you understand that isolation ain't necessarily good for nobody. No human. People are packed people. So if your mind takes you to places where you're not thinking in a packed thought, that's a problem. It's okay to be individualized. You are you. There are certain things that God only has for you. There are certain things in your life that only you can do for you. But a lot of life contributes to all of our lives. So it's not just about us. To live that way is selfish, is arrogant, is prideful. That is evil because it's unnatural. The presence of unnatural tells me that it's natural for it to exist. But there are certain things to where if the unnatural gets taken beyond what is natural for its occurrence, then it becomes unnatural to life. This is how it becomes an antagonist. Unnatural is supposed to exist. But if you operate within the extreme unnatural, that's a problem. See what I'm saying? I'm trying to simplify this for y'all. Anyway, your ego is not the problem. There's other aspects that you're not tapping into and you're not being conscious of. Consciousness, to be woke, is to be aware. So I don't want to I don't want to leave this part out. Be aware. Just be aware of why you behave, how you behave. Be aware of if you're actually in control of the will, if it's your ego that's been compromised, making you an egomaniac and making you arrogant and making you blind and making you prideful. Like, just be aware of why you're doing what you're doing. Be aware of why you have the perspective you have. And if it's even the healthiest version of you. Seriously. There's nothing wrong with being you. Be you. But be you within the realms of what's natural. I'm going to end this with my mantra. Good morning, good evening, good night. No matter where you are on this planet, I'm sending you love and light. I'm gone.